27, number 30. Hypnosis. Perhaps because it is not clearly understood how or why a state of consciousness known as hypnosis should exist, the concept tends to arouse strong reactions, ranging from fear and curiosity to disbelief in very many people. What exactly is hypnosis? Can it be induced without one's knowledge? Can it force one to act against one's will? Is it a high-powered mind-manipulating technique? And if it exists as a state of consciousness, why can't everyone be hypnotized? Or can they? Certainly, the power potential of the hypnotizer encouraged the CIA to spend some years investigating hypnosis as a means for programming assassins, or for sending top-secret messages that would be forgotten the instant after delivery. The accounts of their activities featured in various books such as The Mind Manipulators by Shefflin and Opton, Operation Mind Control by Walter Ballard, and The Search for the Manchurian Candidate by John Marks, all seem to indicate that they didn't get very far. However, many psychological researchers have spent years studying the hypnotic state and have come up with various conflicting theories as to why it works and whom it works with. Ernest Hilgard and colleagues at Stanford University some years ago developed a hypnotic suggestibility scale, which sets certain criteria for assessing people's responses under hypnosis to commands such as, "You cannot separate your hands," or "You cannot say your name." He concluded that between 5 and 10% of the population is highly susceptible to hypnosis, and the same number are completely resistant against it, with the rest of the population falling somewhere in between. Thus, according to Hilgard's findings, most people can be hypnotized, but some more easily than others. This conclusion has been broadly accepted for many years. But recently, another American psychologist has started to question it. Professor Joe Barber of the University of California in Los Angeles Medical School now claims that everyone is susceptible to hypnosis, and that people who appear to be resistant are not resistant to hypnosis itself, but to the way it is traditionally induced. Some individuals, he claims, are simply hostile to the monotonous, lugubrious, deliberately slow tones adopted by hypnotists to induce trance, and also react defensively against direct commands such as "you will feel sleepy" or "your eyes will close." Whereas, according to Barber, if the hypnotist adopts a conversational, non-authoritarian approach, suggesting in a normal, gentle voice ideas such as, "I wonder if you might find it surprising that your eyes start to feel heavy so quickly," there can be more than 100% success rate. Professor Barber has tried this method himself with numerous subjects. In one experiment, he attempted to hypnotize 27 people, and then subjected them all to extremely painful electrical stimulation of the nerve fibers in the teeth. Not one of 27 felt the slightest pain. Accordingly, Professor Barber believes that hypnosis, correctly induced, has had a yet not fully tapped contribution to make in the field of pain control. So he believes that hypnosis is, if it's used right, hasn't fully been explored in the arena of pain control. Because of a misconception as to what the state of hypnosis is, many people presume that they are not being successfully hypnotized because they are not asleep. In fact, hypnosis is a conscious state, identified physiologically as producing the same brainwave patterns as that which occurs when people are in a relaxed state, alpha rhythms. Beta rhythms are associated with normal waking activity and theta rhythms appear to be when a person is slipping from wakefulness into sleep, and delta rhythms occur during deep sleep. In trance, as it is commonly called, is not a single specific definable trait, but more accurately covers anything from relatively light to very deep relaxation. Professor Barber, for instance, said that anyone who is absorbed in what someone else is saying is in a light state of trance. The state of hypnosis is commonly defined as a state of heightened suggestibility, thus providing the stage hypnotist with the opportunity to suggest to a subject that he carry out certain acts designed to amuse the rest of the audience, or the hypnotherapist with the chance to instill confidence in a patient, or, because defenses are down, to draw out the buried details of a troubled past. But certain researchers believe that a state of suggestibility is just normal waking condition, more notable in some people than others, and that there is no need to designate it as a special state called hypnosis. A vocal supporter of this view is Dr. Theodore Barber. Whoa, Theodore Barber? Who was the other Barber? Professor Barber? Joe Barber. Joe Barber of Los Angeles was the first Barber, and the second Barber is Theo Barber, an expert hypnotist and respected hypnosis researcher for over 20 years, and director of special projects at Cushing Hospital in Farmington, Massachusetts. The main thrust of Theodore's argument is that the kind of people who can perform the most interesting mental feats under hypnosis can in fact perform them without the aid of any induced hypnosis at all. On the basis of his research, he claimed that between 3 and 4% of the female population at least can hallucinate at will, touch apparitions, and have out-of-body experiences, and that most of such women are leading normal, active lives, unaware that their powers are anything special. And such abilities are found, says Theodore, not in accordance with certain levels of education, or types of personality, or emotional stability, but in women who share one basic trait: a tendency to have fantasized from an early age and continue an intense fantasy life as adults. Barber made this discovery, that's Theodore Barber, almost by accident. He had set out to research what characteristics, if any, so-called somnambules. I don't even know what that word means. Okay, here it goes. It's going to tell me. Had in common. Somnambule is a name given to people who are so susceptible to hypnosis that they can be induced to experience specific sensations, such as heat or cold, to smell or taste, to order, to suffer amnesia for any event, or to regress to past lives and reliably to carry out post-hypnotic suggestions. Somnambule. Barber gave hypnotizability tests to over 900 people and found 19 women aged from 21 to 47 who were clearly somnambules. Since he reported his research, Theodore Barber has carried out even wider testing and now has 30 somnambules, among them men, or some of them men. When Barber later interviewed and tested his 19 highly hypnotizable women in depth, he made the discovery that they were so easy to hypnotize purely because they could also hypnotize themselves. They didn't need a hypnotist. There was nothing that they could be made to do under hypnosis that they couldn't do of their own free will, he said. It appeared that as children, All the women had lived for the most part in a fantasy world of their own, very often shared by imaginary playmates that were real enough to touch, see, and hear. It's interesting. As adults, none of the groups spent less than 50% of their time in fantasy, and the majority estimated that a full 9/10 of their time was spent in an imaginary world that coexisted with their ordinary one. For instance, they could fantasize at work without actually losing concentration for the task at hand. I constantly used to do that. I had a very boring assembly job, and once you know the movements, you can just let your mind wander. That's the most perfect job for me. It was a common word, or a sight, or a sound trigger their imagination, and almost literally transport them to a place that the sensation conjured up. For instance, the name of a country was enough to set in motion an intense living fantasy of foreign parts. One subject, during an interview about her abilities, enthused, fantasies being anything you want to be, anything you can be, or anything you are. Its possibilities made possible. It's soaring, thrilling, living. Who's to say what's happening right now is reality? Most intriguing and convincing for Barber was the fact that the fantasies didn't stay firmly entrenched in the nebulous realm of the mind. They had physical manifestations, which were often measurable. Most could reach orgasm by sexual fantasy alone. 11 out of 14 who were asked admitted to having at least one phantom pregnancy. And with all the associated symptoms, lack of periods, breast changes, cravings, and the feeling of fetal movements inside. They could experience heat or cold just by imagining it. Experiences of telepathy, precognition, and the unintentional or intentional summoning up of lifelike apparitions were all just part of daily life to the phenomenal women. They could also remember their childhood in amazingly vivid detail. Except me. Few of the women, it transpired from the interviews, realized that all other people did not regularly have similar experiences. Didn't everybody? The women came from all walks of life, and most were emotionally stable, usually living within long-established couple relationship. All these findings were reported at the annual meeting of the American Association for Study of Mental Imagery in Minneapolis, June 20, 1980. Various psychologists have, independently over the last few years, come to the conclusion that unwitting abuse of self-hypnosis may lead to the emergence of multiple personalities and exotic type phobias. Excuse me. I'm having cravings. We only have a few minutes. Dr. Eugene Bliss, a Utah psychologist who studied 14 cases of multiple personality, found that the patients all created their first personality in early childhood to combat loneliness or insecurity, could all remember their childhood in detail, and were all easily hypnotized. They could also distort their own higher brain functions so as to reduce or enhance sensations or block out memories. Cigarette went. A patient whom Dr. Morton Schatzman has written about in The Story of Ruth came into treatment because she kept seeing apparitions of her father. Taught in treatment to create such apparitions for herself, she could summon apparitions of anyone at all. In one specific investigation of her abilities, it was discovered that if she summoned an apparition of her daughter, to sit on her lap in such a way as the apparition's head blocked out the light from a lamp. Ruth's brain actually registered no response to the light from the lamp. Psychiatrists Frankel and Orn, in an experiment on hypnosis as an effective cure for smokers and phobias, found that no phobic patient was unresponsive to being hypnotized, whereas many smokers were, and that the more phobias they had, the more suggestible to hypnosis they became. The psychiatrist wrote in Archives of General Psychiatry, "These findings suggest that individuals who developed phobic symptoms must have the capacity of manifesting some of the mental processes where images and fantasies can become sufficiently vivid and real to the confused with the world. Can be confused." Oh my god, my reading booed. I fucked up. The kind of mental processes where images and fantasies can become sufficiently vivid and real to be confused with the world outside. The ramifications of such findings are wider than just the possible discovery of that which lies behind hypnotic suggestibility. However, in the more traditional hypnosis research, it has long been Just read what's there, Mike. You know what? My mom used to say that. She used to yell at me, "Can't you write that on the page?" I don't know whoever. Did I ever say that, kids? I'm sorry. I apologize. If I ever said that to you, or got frustrated with you because you couldn't figure it out, or you tongue-tied, please forgive me. Please forgive me. I now know it was difficult. Should have known before. Goody, we're about to close this chapter out, and I can't focus anymore. However, in even more traditional hypnosis research, it has long been asserted that imagination plays a part in creating suggestibility. Hilgard, from assessment of the personality types most associated with somnambulism, claims that early childhood experience plays a strong part in and stresses imaginative experiences. Interests such as music and reading, which require a strong personal involvement in the activity itself, and also excessive parental punishment, which could lead a child not only to become obedient and reliant. Okay, we are not tracking. An ingredient responsiveness to hypnosis, but to withdraw into fantasy to escape. So, the types of people that could easily be hypnotized, their early childhoods, interests such as music and reading, which required strong personal involvement in the activity itself, and also excessive parental punishment could lead a child to become obedient and reliant, but also to withdraw into fantasy and escape. Imagination plays a part in creating suggestibility. Early childhood plays a strong part in stresses imaginative experiences. Interests such as music, needing strong involvement, and also excessive parental punishment lead a child. Alright, whatever. I guess he's just simply saying if I force you to play the piano, you're going to fantasize while you're playing it, and you're going to hate me every minute of it, but then later on you just might appreciate it. I guess that's how it goes. How many people have that story? My mom made me do this, and I hated it, but now I appreciate what she did for me, and I enjoy it. A lot of people still hate what they were forced to do. But my experience is I spent my entire teenage years in fantasy. Period. Okay, this is where we'll start. And I start again. I went at dance lessons, my mom said, "Oh, you just think that'd be fun. You'll give up as soon as it gets hard. I'm not even going to give you a chance at it." I don't come from a family that believes in supporting me. But sometimes they try, and I should thank them for their trying. I really should, because I got a good family.